It is recording on speaker view, just so you know, Patrick. Please speak yourself when you come in, if you're not already. Thank you. Oh, so can you share, Patrick, when you start, how many bells you do as a beginning and how many bells as the end? Because we all have.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. We are going to step into a practice period. I want to invite everyone to find a posture that feels alert. You're able to sustain yourself for 30 minutes. I'll be offering some light guidance along the way, but it'll be a pretty silent meditation other than that. So just settling into our bodies and noticing what it feels like to stop moving and allow the weight of our bodies on the cushion or on the chair. Taking a moment to notice our breath. We'll begin with a single point of attention. So if you're in the practice period, just notice the moments where the air is coming in through your nostrils, the swell of the belly, and the exhalation. Bring attention to our breath. We'll be practicing for 30 minutes. I'll be starting our meditation with one bell, and I'll ring 3 bells at the end to let us know that we're complete. Just noticing if the mind has wandered. The invitation is to bring your focus back to your breath. As your breath finds its pace, allow yourself to notice yourself breathing in vitality and energy, and exhaling any tension or distractions. Using your breath as a focal point to hold your attention. Taking a moment to notice where our concentration is. Invitation is to notice now, expanding beyond the breath. You also notice where you're resting on the cushion, where your body meets the chair or the floor. You notice that sensation. And then expanding that awareness, and also focus our attention on where our hands are resting. By expanding our awareness, inviting a deeper practice of concentration. We're now noticing the breath, where we're resting on the cushion, and where our hands are resting. Taking a moment to notice our breath. You can move from single point of attention to multiple points of attention. And I'll invite those that are comfortable to continue expanding your awareness. Trying to maintain your concentration. Can you invite in the sounds around you? Can you simultaneously become aware of the temperature in the room? Any other physical sensations while holding your focus? Just for the next few minutes, inviting us to have a luminous mind and expand our awareness to include all of our surroundings whilst trying to maintain our focus. As we approach the end of our practice together, I invite those that are inclined to practice metta with me as we close. If it doesn't appeal to you, please just let my voice fall to the back of your mind and continue to practice. We'll start this practice by inviting into our mind's eye version of ourselves, holding in our attention our own space, our own identity, and focusing on ourselves. I'll offer these prayers aloud as you can repeat them to yourself silently. May I feel joy and ease. May I feel safe, healthy, and protected from both inner and outer harm. May I feel strong in my spirit and my body. May I be free. Next, I'll invite you to bring into your consciousness and awareness the image and identity of somebody who has contributed to your well-being, sometimes referred to as a benefactor. This is anybody who has invested in your well-being and really helped to develop the character that you hold. So if you get that person into your consciousness and in your mind, we'll offer the same prayers aloud while you repeat them silently. May this person feel joy and ease. May this person feel safe, healthy, and protected from inner and outer harm. May this person be strong in spirit and in body. May this person be free. Lastly, I'll ask you to invite into your mind's eye an image or identity of a person that you may not know their name, you may not know them well, you may have heard their story in the news, you may be aware of them in a very subtle way. But pulling that person into your mind's consciousness, we're going to offer the same prayers to them. May this person feel joy and ease. May this person feel safe, healthy, and protected from both inner and outer harm. May this person feel strong in their spirit and in their body. May this person be free.
Thank you, Patrick. All right, welcome everyone to Access to Zen. Patrick is our guest speaker tonight. I'll introduce him in a bit. Welcome. And first we do a little intro of ourselves. And if you haven't already, if you could put your pronouns in your name tag, you can do that by hovering over the 3 dots on the right of your picture and then rename yourself. And in the introduction, we're gonna do it a little differently tonight, a little shorter so that we give Patrick the full breadth of time to share the Dharma with us and read with us. So I'm going to call you by names and then please say your pronouns and then 1 or 2 words. 1 or 2 words, please, of how you're doing tonight. Right? Oh, shoot, I forgot the robe chant, darn it. Ah, thank you, Regan. Okay, put it up. I was so eager to get Patrick going here. All right, here we go. Unmute everyone. Uni, can you unmute everyone? If not, you can unmute yourself. I got muted instead. All right, here we go. Okay. It's a Dharma in action. Here we go.
Great growth of liberation, feel far beyond
Tathagata's teaching,
saving
all beings.
All right. As you say, a Zen master's life is one continuous mistake. So we'll end it together. All right, now we're going to go around and say hi and say your pronouns and a word or 2 about yourself, how you're doing today. All right, Reverend Lien, she, her. I am excited and well, all right, Patrick.
Thank you. I am Patrick. I use he and they pronouns, and I am cool.
All right, thank you. All right, Emma and Colin. I'm just going across my screen.
My name is Emma. She, her, they, them, and I'm feeling relaxed.
Colin, he, him, excited.
All right, yeah. Ben? You have to unmute yourself. It's okay.
Hi, I'm Ben. He, him, feeling grateful for you all.
Rugen.
My name is Rugen. He and him pronounce, and I'm feeling settled.
Yeah. Althea.
Althea, she, her, open and curious.
Peter.
Peter, he, him pronouns. I'm feeling awake.
Alright. Katie,
Katie, she, her pronouns. I'm feeling jubilant and relaxed.
right. Jason,
Jason, he, him, also feeling very settled today.
okay. Michelle,
I'm Michelle, she, her. I'm feeling relieved.
Shinsen,
Shinsen, she, her. I'm feeling grateful.
Jason,
Keizen, they, them, uncertain and happy.
Barbara,
And Barbara, she, her, happy and present.
Ellen,
I'm Ellen, she, her. Feeling interested.
Sandy,
Sandy, she, her, feeling imperfect and satisfied.
Chris,
Chris, he, him, or he, I guess, as I wrote in my window. I'm feeling, if I'm honest, a little mopey, and yeah, but okay.
all right. My sister,
And my sister, I use she or they, and I am arriving.
Santiago,
Santiago, he, him, and I'm feeling committed.
all right. Lucy,
Lucy, she, her, and I'm glad to see everyone.
Sarah,
Sarah, she, her. I'm feeling engaged and a little scattered.
yeah. Liz,
Liz, she, her. I am feeling tired and also really happy to see everyone's faces tonight.
Emma,
Emma, she, her, and also quite tired.
and then for the people who aren't on video, if you're able to during the intro, it's always lovely. If not, I understand about bandwidth or whatever the correct word is. Okay, Uni,
Uni, she, her. I am strong and proud today.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia,
Hi, Patricia, she, her. I'm actually pretty stressed out today, but I'm glad to be here.
Christina,
Christina, she, her. I'm pretty exhausted today.
great. All right, so once again, welcome to Access to Zen. And tonight we have a guest speaker, Patrick Brown. I know Patrick from EBMC, where we teach on the Alphabet Sangha and the People of Color Sangha together. Patrick has always seemed to me in our interactions to be kind and connecting and settled. And I think we experienced some of that in the meditation. Welcome once again, and Svaha, go. Welcome. And this is being recorded for everyone to know.
Yes, thank you, Reverend Lien. I appreciate the invitation so much. My name is Patrick Brown, and I am I'm grateful to be here tonight with everybody. Really quite lovely. I just want to lay a little bit of an outline of what I'm going to share tonight, and just make people aware of how we work. I have this feeling that as a guest, I may not be following all the same practices that you're used to, and I just want to ask for your forgiveness ahead of time. But my intention is to share a little bit about myself, enough so that you understand how I came to the Dharma, which actually will weave into my talk tonight, which is really about the First Noble Truth and the origin and how we work with our suffering. There is time, and I'm going to be keeping time. If you see me looking over here, it's because I'm watching my time, but I'm going to be kind of gauging my time, because I also would love to include a new thought that I've been working into a talk around the Third Noble Truth and the cessation of suffering. So after I share that, there will be time for some questions and discovery. And I think might be an invitation for dedicating the merit, I'm not sure, but then that will be our time together. So please, if you have any access needs, you can put them in the chat, but I will do my best to speak clearly. Yeah, and I'm just really grateful for your practice and for being able to be here tonight. Is that it, I think? Okay.
Lovely.
Thank you. So I think it's important to understand a little bit about who I am and my path. I was born at a very young age, just joking, but I was born in Chicago, and I lived on the south side of Chicago for many years. I was born into, my father was Black, my mother was white, and when I was born, my mother was sent away from the family because it wasn't okay. There was a lot of racism in my family. This is in the early 70s. And so the unique thing that happened is I really developed a way to work around racial equity and develop a language and a skill for my survival. My father passed away when I was very young, and then we were invited back into the white family, but this Black person inside of an all-white family had a lot of dynamics working. In addition to that, there were other forms of suffering and challenging experience that I tell the story that my suffering as I moved through the world. Racism that I experienced, moving through the world as a queer Black man. I also identify, that there were opportunities taken from me and not given to me because of my orientation. And the last layer, the icing on the cake, if you will, is in I worked in workforce development on the south side of Chicago. I really experienced the marginalization and the disconnection from very violent places in the south side of Chicago. And so in my work, I became very devoted and focused, and working in the nonprofit industrial complex, I really carried a heavy burden with me. And it wasn't unusual for me to try and find my way out through, alcohol, or just many of the external things that were causing me suffering caused me to just dive in deeper. So it was about 13 or 14 years ago that I really realized that what was happening inside me was much more important to save and preserve, and the external factors were not working for me as cues of my success. So I began a process of turning more internal and reflection. So I also left that job in the nonprofit industrial complex, and I moved to California. I was feeling so bereft and so broken that the doorway that I entered the Dharma through was very palpable suffering. I was in a large crisis, and I was really looking, how could I fix what was going on internally to change my external conditions? And I moved to California and ended up at Spirit Rock. People said, oh, California, and there's this thing, you go do a meditation retreat. I didn't know, so I went. And on the retreat, I had these amazing teachers that provided the Dharma and taught me things about blue sky, expansive thinking, right? They gave me tools through the meditation and through the teachings of the Buddha that encouraged me to reflect and address my challenges, as opposed to trying to, get rid of them or smush them down. And I just experienced my heart breaking wide open on this retreat. And it was not pretty. I often tell the story that I broke into tears, and you can't tell, but I'm a pretty big guy. And I broke my silence, and I went to the manager and I said, I need help. I need some big people to hold me while I'm like shaking and this thing is happening. And a woman, a teacher, Gina Sharp, came to me, and she sat with me, and she spoke the words of the Buddha. gave me a teaching that just was a salve for my soul. And ever since that moment, more than 10 years ago, I have been committed to understanding the Dharma and the way that it reduces our suffering as a tool so that I could help spread that cessation of suffering, that I'm committed to understanding the Dharma and practicing in such a way that it can invite others to find their doorway into this pathway that has completely transformed my life. Reverend Lien said that we met at the East Bay Meditation Center. When I came off of that retreat, my teacher, Larry Yang, introduced me to EBMC and invited me to practice there. And it's there that I learned to deepen my practice. I studied in the Commit to Dharma program. I studied the sutras with him. I practiced with other people that were on the path. I developed these Kalyana Mitta, these friendships that were wholesome, and we were all building towards something great. So the last thing I'll say about my experience on the path is that I ended up at Spirit Rock again for the community Dharma leader training. And in 2.5 years in that program, really was able to, reflect on my skills, the learnings. I met some incredible teachers along the way. And I feel very glad and very fortunate to be able to share some of those teachings and from my own perspective for the cessation of suffering of all beings. So it's a little bit about who I am and how I got to the room and why I do these teachings. So I'd love to start with, the teaching of suffering. When Reverend Liēn invited me, I had on my heart, as many of us are experiencing, the challenges of moving through a COVID world. As a Black man, I also have been involved in social justice and racial equity for a very long time. And it seems like there's something different happening here. There's an opportunity, there's a moment, in a life of practice where my identity as a Black man has made me feel targeted or vulnerable. I've started to feel with the news and with the state-sanctioned murder of Black people, I started to feel overwhelmed. And I turned to my practice and I invited practice of the Vedana, right, to notice and to give me a little bit of spaciousness for me to try and move through the world because the times are very difficult. My friends know my practice is very deep and have come to me for counsel, right? Wise counsel and, well, what does the Dharma say? How do I hold this suffering? How do I hold my overwhelm? And there are some tools available. I often start with, just the practice of mindfulness, the paying attention to your breath and the meditations on the body are a great place to begin. But I want to talk to you about the Four Noble Truths and, the first noble truth of that there is suffering in this world. And provide you with one framework that we can explore together to talk about it. So the wheel of the Dharma is a tool that I was taught that allows for each of the four noble truths to be dissected into 3 portions. And I'll walk us through that process. The first turn of the wheel of the Dharma is where we notice that something is wrong. It's called recognition. So imagine that you are living your life and there's a sense of dissatisfaction. There's a sense of dukkha, or there's a sense of challenge that something's not right, but you can't put your finger on it. You may not find the words for it. The first turn of the wheel is in recognition, and it is that process where we must learn to identify that there's something wrong, and we start to acknowledge our suffering. We start to say to the suffering as it happens in our life, we start to say, I see this suffering. I'm aware of it. I see you. I feel you. I have noticed you as suffering, and I will take care of you. In my own practice, I think about, before my father passed away, he was a very loving man. He was even bigger than I was. He was 6'4", and he was 300 pounds, and he's a big, dark-skinned man, and he moved through the world with a lot of, vigor. He also was a Green Beret medic who was in Vietnam and was exposed to some horrific conditions. By the time he had returned, he had been traumatized, and what we would now call PTSD was living out some of the expression of that trauma, which meant that he sought refuge in drinking and drugs and caused a lot of harm. He was quite violent when I was younger. So although I, was aware of that trauma, noticing that suffering or being in recognition that there was something wrong, I had never named it until I moved to California and had really started working in my Dharma to reflect on what was causing my suffering. There was a lot of pain that was caused. And before I was able to recognize and be able to say, I have pain and I will take care of that pain, that was my first step in healing. The second turn of the wheel is referred to as encouragement. And in this step, we really are exploring the orientation and the causes of your suffering. You think about, you transition from, I don't know what it is, to wanting to be able to name it and explain the pieces of it. So you must learn to treat it as, watch it show up, and then you must invite it to understand its nature and its causes. What is it that's causing the pain? And if you're able to sit and practice mindfulness and be aware of our breath and our body, when we become still, that suffering can start to reveal itself, the origins of it. We start to pay attention, whether it's in meditation or if we are using walking meditation, or perhaps we're in a labyrinth, you can hold your suffering in a way that you're present with it and paying attention to the suffering, where it will start to reveal its trace to its root causes. So I'm just going to stop for a moment and invite us just to notice what might be arising. And if I were to invite you on this path to explore both the recognition and the encouragement of suffering that you might have, where could that path take you? Understanding the root causes of our suffering is a core component of our practice when we decide not to run from it, to face it. I'm sure many of you have had the experience that I have, where when people find out that you practice Buddhism, they say, oh, that's great. So you can just kind of zen out or smooth out. It's like, oh, no, no, no. Actually, the practice is not about, circumventing or denying. It's actually, the work is being present, facing that trauma and that dukkha. But can I sit in my practice? Can I notice the suffering and stay present with it, even when it's uncomfortable, knowing that that too is temporary. The invitation is not to be attached to the suffering, but to also not turn away from it, to bravely step forward. And, there's many pathways to practicing this, but I invite in the suffering a little bit at a time, to the point where I can actually work with the suffering to acknowledge it, which is part of the third turning of the wheel, is the recognition that our suffering is understood. When we have sat with our suffering, explored the roots of it, and understood the conditions that help to create it, then and only then can we actually start to release it. So the realization that that we can identify our pain and the characteristics of it, that we can work to understand the causes that created it and what is feeding into it. I often think of, right action in the way of like, how am I not just living my life and earning a living, or like wise livelihood, but I think about what are the ways that I'm contributing to feeding that suffering. So if I am feeling overwhelmed and I'm feeling that the police sanctioned murders of Black people is too much for me to hold and to bear, you know, how useful is it that I have CNN on like all day? Many people are calling into question, like, what is the purpose behind people sharing the video of these murders? Yes, we need to be aware, but is there a condition that I'm contributing to by watching? And, you know, not that different from the second arrow teaching, am I continuing to create the condition of my own suffering? And so the realization not only has to dealing with understanding the roots of it, but starting to give consciousness to the fact of ways that we are contributing to it, perpetuating it. So I'll stop there again for a moment, just to invite you into a quiet reflection around where is there suffering that you might be willing to recognize, encourage, and investigate, ultimately to realize, and then try and set yourself free from. I want to make the offering to self-monitor yourself. This is just a reflective exercise, so maybe don't choose like the most traumatic experience you've had. You know, maybe find something combing through our days. Is there suffering that you can look at gently from afar? So pulling into your consciousness and your mind, let's call it suffering light that you might be experiencing in this moment. So this is actually the first turn of the wheel, which is recognition. Noticing that something is there, something is dissonant. There may be something settling. It's not quite right. Then inviting you into the second practice of encouragement. Practice for me often is, you know, I present with this discomfort around, there's a feeling in my gut that something's wrong. Maybe it's about, you know, the way that I spoke to my husband this morning. I'll invite you in the encouragement phase just to go a little bit deeper. Like, what's underneath that? What was it that I said to my husband that was not kind? What was it that I said that was not in alignment with my values? A moment just to notice, using our breath and our bodies to ground and center ourselves. Can you invite a little exploration around the encouragement and what are the conditions that are created for that discomfort? And in the third turning of the wheel, just inviting what it might look like if you were able to realize what's possible when you're able to name the cause of the suffering that you're identifying with. Would you be able to transform that suffering? Would you be able to understand where that suffering may be having impacts that were previously unseen and unnoticed? And the practice is this framework of recognition, encouragement, and realization can be tied to our mindfulness and meditation practice to hold and really understand the challenges that show up in our practice. All right, I'm going to transition just for a moment to some new thinking around the third noble truth, which is at the end of suffering. I'll ask you if you are comfortable to raise your hand if you think that you're going to awaken in this lifetime? Hand is not up. All right. The invitation, this is a question that my teacher, Larry Yang, often asks is like, do you believe that you're going to awaken this lifetime? And if you don't, what are you doing here? And so I started to think about, well, I'm here because I want to meet the end of suffering for myself and for all beings. And that intention is solid. But the idea that I would go through the process that the Buddha did and that I would enlighten is a little far afield for me. I'm not saying I won't, but it felt far. So what Larry invited was to come a little bit, set the bar a little closer. Well, what do you think is possible? Well, I know that this world can transform and that I'm in community and I'm in work that makes me feel like something different is possible, that there is less suffering now than there was before I was awakened, before I started this process of trying to awaken. I also know that as a teacher, I have gotten feedback that has really moved my heart, that I've offered something in some ways that has provided the reduction of suffering for others. So I feel encouraged by that. And in those moments, I notice my truth feels very transmitted. It is a feeling that I am both centered and grounded, and that the word of the Dharma is coming through me, and that I'm so grateful for those moments. That feeling it's very rich and it's fleeting. I have had several of them, and so I started to think, what is the end of suffering really going to look like? Is the end of suffering that I will not be subject to the hindrances? Will I no longer feel tired or doubt? Like, will that actually happen in my lifetime? I'm not sure, but I know that in that moment when I felt like I was transmitting, I felt no doubt. What if the end of suffering is not a complete transformation where everything is that way forever, but what if it just happens in moments? What if on our pathway toward the end of suffering, we are experiencing moments of it that we can expand and breathe into, knowing that there will be another moment where the doubt does return? I think about waking up with terrible racist tweets coming from the White House. I think about the eco collapse. I think about the fear I have around my 9-year-old foster son moving through the world and afraid of COVID, and it just overwhelms. And then there are moments when I'm in communities much like this, where I feel like I know the truth, that there is something better and that something else is possible. And in those moments, I feel that I have the cessation of my suffering feels complete. So what if instead of just having the perspective that the end of suffering will be a moment that transitions and everything is different ever after, what if there is access to that similar feeling in those moments and we pay attention to them along the way? So as I've shared, this is the fodder for a new talk that I'm working on in relation to, in the time of COVID and all of the unrest. I want us to think more broadly about what the end of suffering looks like. It may not just be awakening, but there may be some cessation of suffering that's available to us now, and how can we tap into that? So I think I'm coming close to my time, and so I want to honor the space. I would love to just say that I walked into the space with the intention of sharing some thoughts and reflections on the Dharma that I hope would be useful. My intention was that, and if it landed poorly, and if I did anything or said anything that caused you harm, I ask for your forgiveness. Similarly, if there was anything that you may have said or done that caused me any harm, I offer you my forgiveness. And I'm deeply, deeply honored and grateful for your practice tonight. So I will hand it over. I think I'm right on time. Okay, ish. I'll hand it over and say thank you for the opportunity. Excellent.
Excellent. Thank you, Patrick. Are you taking, how would you frame what your interaction with the Sangha at this point is?
I am open to questions. I'm open to challenges / reflections. I shared what was on my heart, and I would love to hear if it's landing for anybody or if I may have made a misstep. I'm open to all feedback.
Right. Just raise your hand, and if you're not on video, you can do it in the icon or in chat. Michelle.
Thank you very much, Patrick. This idea about intermittent or periodic cessation of suffering, I really like that. I find that very refreshing because it seems more attainable. And it reminds me of gratitude, which is something I feel similarly is like a refreshing a refreshment in the midst of suffering, something you can attain and it goes away, you can get it again. And so that's how that struck me, and I appreciate that concept. Thank you.
Oh, Chris.
I just wanted to say thank you, Patrick, first. That was really wonderful. Drilling down into those 3 wheels, I found really helpful just in the moment. I had a question actually about the metta practice we did at the end of our meditation, which was the last part of wanting to experience freedom. And I wondered what your definition of that feeling would be for oneself and others.
Great. I just want to make sure I got the question here. It's the what do I think freedom is? Or
in that moment, in the metta practice, that feeling.
Yeah. I want to acknowledge that freedom looks so different for so many different people, and the freedom that the freedom that I believe is possible is for people to attain, their own ability to make decisions to live their fullest version of their own lives. I don't actually have like a, they need to. For some people, freedom actually is like a monetary place, so they have enough money to take care of themselves and their family. For some people, it is a health aspect. I need to have this amount of health. But I think I'm more tied to the liberatory consciousness of freedom being really self-determined. So I also want to just acknowledge that that version of metta is a practice that there are traditional phrases and invitations that you'll feel the flavor of, but it's not exactly the teaching. And I offer that because for me, the resonance with changing the words or helping to frame them as things that are accessible to me and my mindset and my heart helps me to resonate, and it's more penetrating. Acknowledge that as well. I also want to take a minute to acknowledge that the part of what I shared tonight comes from a beautiful book that my mother gave me. It's called The Heart of the Buddhist Teaching. It's a Thich Nhat Hanh book. I think a lot of people know it well, but I want to just make sure I say that the part of what I shared tonight comes from there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question, Chris.
I'll go ahead and do a follow-up question. I'll write that. And because I thought I heard it from Chris also, what is freedom that's not a self-freedom? Individual freedom.
Sorry. What is freedom that's not a self-freedom?
An individual, self-determined freedom.
There is a collective freedom that's possible. There is a collective, what I think of it, and I'm curious what other folks think as well, but I think of it as a remembering. I think that the delusion of greed and hatred and separation has been, is in the world, and it causes a lot of our suffering. And so when I think about our collective freedom, what I believe is possible is that we are able to remember the interconnectedness. I think that we're able to remember the conditions that we came into this world with. And so not to spiritually circumvent the, what happens in this lived experience of our physical bodies, but the remembrance that we are all interconnected and that there is an energy that's possible. That's a freedom. That's an image of what I think collective freedom can look like. We all were to remember we have a shared consciousness. This would address all of the challenges that I spoke of earlier, the ecological challenges, the health challenges. Like, so much is possible when we remember that we are interconnected. I think that's what collective freedom can look like.
Anyone else? Ellen.
Hi, I really appreciated your words, like others have said about the metta and the end of suffering. When you said our interconnectedness, do you mind saying more about how you're thinking of that in that context?
Sure. I'm trying to frame it. A lot of the work I do in the world is with a racial equity consulting firm. And so in these times, it's all in my brain, but I bring a lot of what I've learned in the Dharma to that work. And I find it very, very helpful for folks. And so I'm trying to frame this more exclusively in the Dharma. Because, let me think for a moment. I'm like, how much time do I have? Okay. If we think of our attachment and the way that we want and yearn for things, and we consider in a lot of the teachings, the reflection that our cause of our suffering, the second noble truth, is in our longing and in our reaching for those things. I think that there is something possible where the delusion of what we want is something outside of ourselves can cause us so much suffering that the remembering and the interconnectedness can be the solution or the antidote to such a outward reaching. Like, if I know that I am connected in this Sangha, and I know that my spiritual needs and I'm taken care of and I'm seen and I'm held here, then it allows me to reduce the amount of longing and reaching and grasping that I'm doing in the other. And so remembering of like what our collective like there's so many ways in this world, in this country, we are invited and tempted and swayed to be, you know, to believe that we don't have enough, to believe that there's limited resources. And the consciousness that I want, that I know is possible, has everything to do with our interconnectedness, that my experience has an impact on your lived experience. The more we can step into that and acknowledge that, and from the delusion of separation, the further and the better we'll be able to go. It's a lot. Thank you for your question and for your patience. I would like to share just one quote that's been powerful for me, just really quickly. Bayard Rustin was a gay Black man that was often in the background of the civil rights movement. He helped organize the March on Washington. And he says all the time that to be afraid is to act as if the truth were not true. And in my liberatory consciousness and a lot of the frameworks I've been thinking through, like, what do we know to be true? And how are we acting on that truth? To be afraid to tell the truth or to not acknowledge the truth is to say that you don't really know that it's true. And when I do know my truth, I'm then able to, you know, to have less fear, if you understand the there.
Sarah.
Hi, Patrick, and thank you so very much. And hello, Sangha. I don't know if it's, you know, fair to do, but I come from originally a Christian background, and when you were talking about the awakening that comes and drops away, I had an amen came. So thank you for that. And I was when you were offering the space for the contemplations for us, thank you for doing that, to open the space in the midst of the talk, you know, to like, feeling. For me, what's alive right now is the complexity of parenting and the endless, you know, pain actually of the complexity of being human and caring for living beings. And I heard you mention your foster son, and I just wonder if you could offer some reflection on this liberation, on the nourishment of awakening in our, you know, how we keep coming back to the delusion as parents. Anything you have to offer there, I would be grateful to hear.
Chapter and verse, Sarah. Chapter and verse is coming. Exactly. Yes. You know, it's often said that our family is our like first and deepest teachers. And I think what I can offer, and I'm happy to hear other people's reflections, is that, you know, with Michael and with our parenting, because the delusions show up again and again and again, that there is a resilience that's generated by our practice. There is, you know, just as we return to the breath, just as we return each morning, you know, I don't know that there's a way to make it easier, but what I know is that the strength is deepened and galvanized in our practice of coming back. So I imagine the compassion that I have to generate for Michael, which is fed in his cutest moments, which are so very, very cute, that everybody comments on and everybody sees him on the Zoom call and it's like, oh, he's so cute. I'm like, yeah. In those moments, of course, the compassion and the joy is very accessible. And then in the really very real conditions of challenges around his birth parents and what he's going through right now, and angrily lashing out, testing boundaries, the resilience that's required to show up again and again and again can feel exhausting. I felt at the end of my rope. And what I know is that without this practice, I would not be as well prepared to show up again. That suffering, while very palpable and real, will also pass. And because of my practice, I know it will pass and I can wait for the next moment. My grandma would say, trouble don't last always. But what I know is that the Dharma will allow me to show up again and again and again. And so my encouragement would be that, I'm right there with you. And a lot of us parents are just trying to show up again and again and again. Wish I had a better answer, but that's what I've got. Thank you.
Amen again.
All right, I want to, we have a few more minutes, so I want to invite those who generally move back. It's an opportunity to move forward and engage with Patrick and or the Sangha. Isisa.
Thank you so much, Patrick, for your talk and practices that you offered. I'm really grateful. And this is just like a more general question that I've been I've been asking myself, how can I make my own practices more accessible to myself? Like, I guess it came up for me because I realized I had some extensive notes that I took in that book, The Heart of the Buddha's Teaching, on the 12 turnings of the Dharma wheel. And hearing you talk about it, I was just like, wait. And I find that there are a lot of things that I learn and practices that have been so valuable that like get buried in me. So I don't know if there's something there just around how I'm looking at things or anything just around how to make things, truth that I already know, that we already know, more accessible and more able to like be worked with in the day-to-day.
Yeah, I love that question. What first occurs to me is kind of what is underneath your presenting question of like, how do I make it more accessible to myself? It's like, well, what is the real thing that needs to be served in that? Like, what are you not getting? Is it a logistical thing? Because I can say, I'm a very relational person, and when I tell somebody I'm going to do something or find somebody that wants to review my notes with me, that's how I know I'm going to do it. But I hear, intuitively, I hear a little bit below that there is some, like, what's the reason behind you wanting to change the way you practice? Is accessibility the right word? Is accessibility the challenge? Is your practice not as accessible as you want it to be? I would ask you, if you don't mind, like, what is that? What's not being met in your current version of your practice?
I think that it is that on some level I tell myself a story that I don't have the tools that I need in a moment. And it could be subconscious. Like I'll just notice myself spiraling out into something, and by the time I can get to the point where I've created a little bit more space between myself and the feeling after bringing it like a little bit closer, I'm like, wait a minute, there's so many things that I could do right now.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I mean, I would invite some within Sangha, right? It's a great way to to build connection and to be more thorough in your practices and make it more accessible, hopefully by building relationship around the practice of reading notes and studying and doing what you're doing tonight in Sangha. But it sounds to me also like there's an opportunity to acknowledge what is. You know, that there's so much information coming towards us at all times. Like, is it realistic to expect that you're actually going to find a way to hear and sustain cognition of all of those things? Probably not. So maybe it's like doing some work with yourself to prioritize or just be gentle and kind to yourself, to be like, that's not realistic. There's another way to get at what is underneath that need. There's another way to get to me feeling like the story I'm telling myself about my practice is blank. I am a world-class storyteller to myself. I will convince myself all the way, but sometimes it's useful just to sit with that. What does it mean that you're not able to sustain, to retain everything at that level of cognition? And I'd be curious to hear like what came after that.
All right, I think we're coming to the end of the time. Any last Patrick, any last thoughts or words from you about the talk or the exchange?
Yeah, I'm so grateful. And I would love to invite folks to, you know, you can find me teaching at East Bay Meditation Center, but more important than that, like I would just invite you in these very strange times to turn up the heat just a little bit on your practice and see what it looks like to stretch yourself into a little bit more deepening of the Dharma in your life, because it has been such a gift to all of us, but to me, my lived experience. And, you know, may the merit of our practice together really have an impact throughout the world on all beings in all directions. So thank you for your practice.
That was the dedication. I'll take that as the dedication. Yeah. All right. It's been a pleasure to share Monday night with you. Thank you, Patrick, so much. Lovely. I will say, I did say that I had some Sangha news. I apologize if I was teasing, and I'm gonna wait until next week to give you the news. And some of it's interactive, that we need to make some decisions together. And nothing major though, folks, so it's okay. Don't worry. And if you are, and you know, if that's hard to hold by yourself, feel free to email me, or, you know, and we can have an exchange about it. Just more in the framing of the Mondays to come. That's the news that will be forthcoming. All right. You're in my heart. Please see if you can feel it, trust it, rest there, and then please extend it. Connect to as many hearts as you can this week. Thank you. Be well. Thank you. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're staying. Okay.
What a sweet Sangha, Lien, that's so sweet.
Yeah, that's great. Share with me what's up for you.
I love small groups, and not being able to do that tonight was hard. It felt like a lot of me taking up space. I have my notes here on the screen. I have a brand new computer that arrived today.
Oh,
I've
wow.
got my notes on the screen here, and I wasn't able to, I've noticed myself a little bit, you know, trying to follow my notes. And yeah, just feeling really proud as well, you know. I don't have an expectation of perfection, but I heard in the responses that there was some value, and I believe I met time and my feeling, my heart, I believe my connection was clear. I offered it in a way that I feel good about. Shared of my own story and invited them to reflect on their own experience. So I feel like I hit a lot of the major things I wanted to do.
Oh, you went mute for some reason. I heard you say you hit all the points you wanted, many of the points you wanted.
Many of them, yes. I would, love to try it again, and I would do even better. But like, I think it went well. I'm very open to your feedback and what you thought worked and what didn't work, and yeah, I'm very open.
Thank you. Thanks for asking. I thought it worked great. I thought you did an excellent job.
Oh, good.
Excellent job. These are, as you were speaking, I thought, oh, just because we have talked about this being that to support you in your teaching. If you have a purpose to the meditation, you don't have to, and I'm asking if it was and what were they, if you had them?
So I did. I wasn't sure if it was a silent meditation. One of the things I should have asked more questions about was, this clearly isn't just a Zen group, but I feel like it is because of your lineage. I should have asked more questions about the meditation before I got here, because in my mind, I was thinking like, oh, these are not Zen practices. Like, so I don't want to go too far afield. So I started with the single point to multiple point to luminous mind, because I was actually trying to set up some expansive, like, they're used to one particular type of thing. I want them to start opening up, just for my different style of teaching. And the metta, I knew that everybody would know what metta was, and it's such a endearing practice that I also wanted to generate some goodwill for us this is the first time I've ever been here. It's a unique combination of people. I wanted there to be something that we shared together. Metta does that for me often. So that was my thinking. Yeah.
All right. I will say that, oh, by the way, this is our recording, and I thought it would be good for you. So, I mean, by that I meant, since you haven't been recording, I'm like, it's good for you. Yeah. Actually, I do combine Vipassana with Zen. That's the access part, because the form of Zen, the spirit of Zen, I think, is I want to get across, and that's my religion, you could say, and my practice is Vipassana. In the sense of for me, that is where it supports people to be with the alleviation of suffering. Zen is really good to me about talking about the freedom of liberation, like what that might feel like, or have a sense of, or to like put the mind there. Or to direct, it's a better word, to direct the mind there. Whereas to me, Vipassana or insight practices is very much do it like this or as I was saying to someone recently, Zen will say, get over there, there's the door, you're supposed to just go. And Vipassana is like, okay, well, here are the pointers along the way. By that, I don't mean it in a bad sense, just it gives a lot more to support the movement, right? Not that we're all going to same freedom, right?
Right.
So, and I will say that often we do just sit in silence for 30 minutes. And since the pandemic, and now we, with all the George Floyd stuff, I will say that I have been giving much more guided. Yeah. So yeah, it was more, I just was wondering if you had a purpose, and not every meditation has to have a purpose. I will say for the class series, we'll talk about it more. I want to use the samadhi aspect of the Eightfold Path to be the practices as we go, and address the other how many? 5 of the Eightfold Path. So they're gonna be combined. We'll have to refigure this out in terms of talks. It's different when it's just me doing the talking. So that's one. And then, yeah, I thought you really met people. I appreciated all your accessible, you know, invite, if it works for you. I will say that it reminds me that in Zen, again, it's like that. There's the door, right? It's much more like, and then at the same time, though, we also can have the sense of not so personal. Right? And I would say because of my, you know, my original practice, I don't know if you know, is in terms of meditation practice, is Jack Cornfield on cassette, and then Spirit Rock for 5.5 years, or the Women of Color group with Margarita.
Oh yes, Martha.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and oh shoot, I just blanked on her name, who died a few years ago. Anyway, when they ran the Women of Color group, when they studied with Jack. So
interesting.
then I'm a little too personal for classic Zen. So I appreciate the, you know, and to me, that's the kind of students though that come to Access to Zen. So it is this, to me, what I feel like is important when we're actually alleviating suffering is to help to negotiate the relative and the absolute. Zen is really into the absolute. And I think for me, Vipassana can get a little stuck in the relative and the I. And so how do we negotiate that is the issue. Not like that's wrong to be here or there.
Right.
Like, where do we find ourselves, and are we stuck there? And are we suffering from the stuck? And so,
yeah, it's like, could there be a dance where it's like a little bit like a little movable, like not so stagnant? I like that. Yeah.
All right, and yeah, that's just the general stuff. The main thing I really need to clear or ask you about is when I welcome. Well, I think this is kind of, if you didn't figure it out, a little bit of a, you know, your interview.
Yeah.
And you passed.
Oh, yay.
Flying colors. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It means a lot.
Yeah. If you're still interested, I would like to talk dates with you. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so initially I'd set the 27th through the of July we would start and go until November 16th.
Right.
Sarah and Charlie had some family things I think I told you that I had to deal with, so I just spoke with them today. And by the way, I should say that while I have talked with them about 2 things happened since you and I talked. I'm sorry, do you have like 10, 15 more minutes?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
I didn't say how long we might meet after. So just, I can't remember, Thursday or Friday, it feels like Friday. So there are 2 grants that, one that I apply for directly, and one that Charlie and Sarah they're from Stone Creek Zen Center. That's where they're head priests or guiding teachers. And head priests. And I'm going to be a consultant or working together with their Sangha and Access to Zen Center, Access to Zen Sangha about race. So we both heard on Thursday or Friday that we're granted both grants.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, and they're very specific about the Eightfold Path, these new engaged ones, because they're off of the grant I got to develop those. So
wonderful.
Yeah, so I will say that the one that I got directly was applied in the midst of the pandemic. So it's very specifically to address Asian Americans and the anti-Asian American been going on in COVID, right? So having been granted that was going to be a 17-week. That was before all this stuff came up again, and then Charlie and Sarah and I were going to be more a year long, and because of COVID, obviously the sanghas can't like intermingle. And I was going to go there. They were going to come, and then maybe do a retreat together at the end. So then it was more that I was helping them as white teachers to frame broader.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
That's great work. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then because of all the stuff that's been happening, we were like, we just need to do something because people need tools now, right? There's no more we shall overcome. We all need to be working on this now. So that's why we came up with, and I really felt like it's my responsibility to bring really engagement around race even more directly. That's always kind of at the back of my teaching, and now we just need to focus on it. So that's the part that you come in on. So the thing is that because of the way it's set up and American Thanksgiving, the United States Thanksgiving, Charlie and Sarah would prefer not to start July 27th because they had a holiday plan.
Okay.
So can we start on the 3rd, which means we would go until November 23rd?
The 3rd of August?
Yeah. So for 16 weeks, well, 17 calendar because of Labor Day. It's just another week later than I had initially proposed to you. So, but that does go to the Monday of Thanksgiving week. So I don't know what your general plan.
Yeah, we're good. I don't do a lot for Thanksgiving. That's not a big holiday for us.
Okay. All right. All right. So then we're going to meet on Thursday, and we'll at 10 o'clock. I think we should, since it's our first meeting, the 4 of us, I hate to say, but can we plan for the full 2 hours right now if we all get done early?
Are you saying tomorrow, Thursday?
No, today's only Monday. So.
Oh, I was just joking. I knew that. I was just testing you. Good job.
It's okay. I get you.
Thursday.
I missed 2 practice discussion this morning because I had my dates off. So.
Yes, I need to move one thing. I blocked it off when we spoke the other day. Yeah. I blocked off 9 to 12, but my boss put something on there that I'll need to move around a little bit. But what time are you saying? 10 a.m.?
Well, let me go look at my. I thought. Oops. You cannot minimize Zoom when you're recording this meeting. Okay. Let me go look at my calendar. I'm gonna cover this up for a minute. Maybe I was wrong. I have it as 10, and I know they're not available till then. So yeah, 10 to 12. Are workable?
Yeah, let me just get back to you. I need to talk to my boss tomorrow morning. And I can probably move that meeting. So 10 to 12 instead. Got it.
Yeah. And Thursday.
I think if I tell her tomorrow morning, I should be able to move it. So yes.
Okay, great. We'll meet on this Zoom channel. 1.
That's great.
I will start writing up the description. So the idea is that we'll still open it to my listserv, Stone Creek listserv. If you have people you want to invite, you're welcome to do it. And we'll only take 40 people though. So people have to apply. The preference will be people that we know that have practice, because the whole idea is that we're going to build this container. And then at some point people have to commit to it. And they need to commit to the full 16 weeks. Of course, things happen, and we want to start from that place. I will say, I don't know how things are in your practice settings, but in Zen, we're really into showing up for the container and, sustaining it. So, and I think right now, it also, the sense of connection builds with, how that is. So.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I have a short list of students that might be interested that I would love to invite.
Yeah, and it's all Dharma based. We're still committed to finding the money for you, and we're gonna try to see if we can tweak that one grant that we just got, because they're still in the paperwork, and we might not be able to, but either way, we're committed to finding you 1,500 to 2,000. Part of that grant, again, it will be contingent upon what Hamera says, now that you've stepped up and, you know, we kind of accelerated the grant in a way, is that actually there is going to be a video. We're going to make a video about the process, about us to it, because we want to make this, it's really hopefully a learning tool to try to encourage other sanghas, especially in the convert community, to you know, really dive deep into this topic and see how it's a benefit for all.
Yes.
Yeah, so there'll be some, we'll have to figure that out. And so that might include some, so most of our things will be recorded, and some interaction with you. And the person doing it is my girlfriend Deb, because she's a filmmaker. So, and you know, it's proximity.
Actually, yes. Come on, Deb. Let's do it. Yes.
Also, she's done some Dharma stuff, so she has some sense of it. And she's a really good storyteller and a documentarian. So,
how nice.
Yeah. Let's see what else. Okay, so I'll start the write-up and then I'll send it to you all. I might come up with some things that I'd like you all to have for Thursday. For one thing, let's talk about what books you might bring, what of the Eightfold Path might be your interest that you want to give talks around. Oh, the other thing I wanted to ask is, what kind of training have you had with practice discussions or interviews, practice interviews?
I mean, I facilitate a lot. There was a whole, there was a learning arc in the CDL5 around facilitating conversations, practice conversations. I mean, I think I do all right. I think I'm open to learning, or if you have a particular style or a reference that, you know, a framework, I'm open to that, but I feel very comfortable holding conversations.
Okay. But we're talking about Dharma conversations, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I actually don't love the Q&A, because I feel like it puts me into a corner where I've seen people respond from a place of expertise, and I'm much more of like, I will share my thought, but I'm not going to tell you an exact answer, because there's so many interpretations. I will ground my response in the Dharma, but I will not tell you point blank, period, this is exactly the answer. So I don't know how that lands, but yeah.
Well, so Q&A is different from a practice discussion, and I think a lot of it might be the difference. So my experience is practice discussions in retreat is really different from practice discussion outside of retreat. So that's one thing. And I know from my, you know, like I've gone to Spirit Rock retreat since, you know, I have done Zen. I used to be vacation and Dharma vacation. And then now I started with Gil, and I go to retreats with Gil and Andrea sometimes. So and also the Zen model is very much based on teacher-student relationship, and in Japan, your teachers call your master. So it is that is a sense of mastery. So there is a little bit like similar, like I said, you know, go there.
Right.
Though my style is not as much that, and there'll be that at points. So and in general, again, Zen is we're much more interested in I think like your interaction with Isisa was a really good example, like drawing people out. What is it that's here that you're asking about?
Mm-hmm.
How do we support you to answer it for yourself? So that, and at times it might say, well, here are some practices to try. So in a practice discussion, they come to you to find out how to do that. So you're just more direct about it. Yeah. So maybe we'll just do some together, and then, you know.
Yeah, that'd be great. I would love that.
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts or comments? Or...
No, just, you know, I'm very flexible. I'm kind of open to see how it goes, and but I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and I look forward to working with you because I have a deep respect for the work that you're doing in this group, and I'm excited.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm really happy to work with you. I do need an updated bio. I will say I have the wrong information already. Someone else I knew claimed you as a student, so I didn't know that Larry was your teacher.
Who's that?
I don't know. Should I say?
Sure.
John Misford told me you're his student.
Yeah, absolutely. Don was my teacher in Commit to Dharma.
Okay.
And we became friends, and I was absolutely he's been a mentor. He recommended me for CDL5. You know, we have a friendship, but we also have, like, he has been a teacher to me. It's true.
Oh, okay. Okay, I guess because in Zen, like Blanche is my teacher, and since Blanche died, I have Vicky as my teacher, and then Yo is my teacher. It's because of that whole Zen student teacher thing. So not so, like, you know, like, of course I learn from, you know, the abbot or blah blah blah. When we say teacher, we're very or when we say student, unless I say student of access, then in general I say the participant or the sangha or whatever.
Interesting. Yeah.
So all right, so maybe on Thursday also would well, Sarah got to, that's why I asked Sarah to ask you a question, because she and Charlie will be part of the teaching team.
Right. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. All right.
All right, I'll see you on Thursday then.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a
Yeah,
pleasure.
thank you, Reverend.
Flying colors, if there were.
Yes.
Any nervousness? You seem so mellow.
I was a little nervous, but I feel confident in my, you know, I feel confident that I had something worth sharing. But I was absolutely nervous, yeah.
Excellent. All right, okay. All right, thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.